I'm thinking that the narrative around ETH is going to be wrong. It's going to catch people offside. People have basically, because there's been no new money in the space, so they've sold their ETH to buy Bitcoin because of the ETF, right? And this point in the cycle. Makes sense, fine. Then what happens is the ETF is announced. What is everybody going to do after the Bitcoin ETF is announced? Every trader is going to switch their bet from Bitcoin to ETH. And that changes the dynamic.
Real Vision founder and chief executive officer Raoul has been an Ether bull since he started buying the largest altcoin years ago. Like most early crypto adopters, Powell started by investing in Bitcoin, but he sold his Bitcoin holdings after making 10x of his original investment about a decade ago. According to Powell, Ether is clearly the more superior bet because of its superior network effects. He also believes that while the Bitcoin network has been more hostile to further development and change, the largest altcoin has opened its doors to every form of development, contributing to its popularity and wider adoption. About 2 years ago, Powell said, "When you price anything up in DeFi, NFT, community tokens, or even metaverse worlds, everything is basically priced in Ether, including designers' time, etc. Ether is rapidly becoming the currency of the digital world, and Bitcoin is the pristine collateral and base layer." Though Powell still has some Bitcoin holdings, he is more heavily invested in Ether, which he believes will have one of the biggest breakout stories during the next crypto bull market. During a recent interview with Crypto Banter, Powell gives his outlook on the cryptocurrency market as we approach what many people believe will be a highly lucrative and rewarding period for all cryptocurrency investors. While Powell is appreciative of all the Bitcoin ETF bullish sentiments, he points out that Ether and Solana will have bigger breakout stories and larger upside moves in 2024. We will now bring you clips from the interview as Powell discusses an important price level that could precede a massive breakout in Ether prices. Please ensure you watch the video to the end so you don't miss any important piece of information from Raoul Powell. Also, like and share the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
It's really Solana and ETH.
Solana and ETH.
Yeah, nothing else adds up to much. It's just Solana and ETH, and of which Solana is the larger bet. I haven't held much Bitcoin for a while because, I look at this in terms of network effects, and my view is that more things are being built on Ethereum. It's a richer, deeper network, more use cases, and over time, I think the value of the Ethereum network will be more valuable than the Bitcoin network, unless something changes. Now, ordinals and stuff like that, maybe, let's see. And so it's just from that thesis alone that I haven't held much Bitcoin. I've just thought it'll underperform. Now, it always outperforms in crypto spring. The least risk asset in that space always outperforms at first. Then what happens as spring turns into summer, you start getting outperformance of alts, and particularly the large alts first, and then the smaller alts later. So there's nothing unusual about what's going on. I also very interesting to see the chart of ETH Bitcoin, kind of long-term weekly chart. It's been a very interesting, that to me is an incredibly interesting chart, because I actually draw the wedge coming up from 2017 low through the 2020 lows. This is what I'm really interested in.
Holy shit.
If this is right, this is a fucking massive wedge pattern. And we're putting in the stuff that I look at, DeMark indicators, everything else. They're suggesting the low comes this week, next week, the week after. So I'm thinking that the narrative around ETH is going to be wrong. It's going to catch people offside. People have basically, because there's been no new money in the space, so they've sold their ETH to buy Bitcoin because of the ETF, right? And this point in the cycle. Makes sense, fine. Then what happens is the ETF is announced. What is everybody going to do after the Bitcoin ETF is announced? Every trader is going to switch their bet from Bitcoin to ETH. And that changes the dynamic. Now, ETH has been kind of, as I said, struggling around a bit. But once it clears 1900, it gets really interesting. I think I put out a chart yesterday on the ETH chart on my Twitter feed. So what we've got is, it's an Elliott wave chart, and it's a beautiful technical pattern of this lovely kind of flag. So Elliott wave, you tend to get 5 wave advances, ABC declines in a bull market. So you had this wave up 1, it retraces all the way back down, doesn't make a new low. That's a wave 2. Then you start on what is a wave 3. Wave 3s are the big dynamic waves. But within that, it breaks down to a subwave. So this was wave 1. Wave 2 was the correction. And now if you break that, you go into what's known in the most exciting thing of Elliott wave is a 3 of 3. That's when you get the double acceleration point. What we've just seen in Solana feels like it's going to happen in ETH. Particularly now everybody's underweight ETH. People have seen the Solana move. Let's say the Bitcoin ETF comes. You break that trend line, which is about 1900, and before you know it, you're on your way to 2,500 and beyond.
Before the interview, Powell had posted this Ether chart on Twitter and captioned it a gorgeous, gorgeous chart. According to Powell, the chart shows a near-complete Elliott wave pattern, a technical analysis of price patterns related to changes in investor sentiment and psychology. The Elliott wave theory identifies impulse waves that establish a pattern and corrective waves that oppose the larger trend. As shown in Powell's chart, Ether has had two upside waves and their individual opposing waves. This means we are close to the final phase of the pattern, the third upside wave, which is usually more massive than the first two. Powell believes this wave will be preceded by a smaller upside move above $1,900. Then from there, we could see ETH climb as high as $3,200 per token. During the interview, Powell also discusses his general outlook on the economy and why it is supporting the recent burst of liquidity in the cryptocurrency market. The former Goldman Sachs executive references a recent statement from BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, who on October 16 said investors are using cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin as a flight to quality.
Around the time Larry was saying what he said, the markets were starting to figure out that the real problem was this excess supply issuance of bonds, and that inflation wasn't going up, but bond yields kept rising. And it was that moment that gold and crypto picked up very quickly, is that the more bond yields go up, the more they started going up. That correlation changed. And that correlation was driven by the fact, I think, that the market knew if bond yields are going to go up like this, the Fed or the government or somebody's going to intervene. So you get closer to the cowbell, the stimulus, somebody's going to do something. So I think that was a really big factor in it, and things started taking off. It's like, okay, if this bond market's going to get out of control, then you need to hide somewhere. And also, the banks had started going down again as well, if you remember. Yeah, October 16th, like the banks had this little peak and then started dropping like a stone. And so, again, the market's job is to forecast the probability of stimulus or a flight to safety. And Bitcoin always does well out of it. So that's what I think started it off. And I think Larry saying the same thing around the same time that the banks turned around, also adds fuel to the fire. I don't know if there was any economic data out that day, but there was probably something around that as well. What's going on is interest rates are too damn high, and they have to issue ongoing bonds to cover the deficits, but they have to roll the bonds from last 4 years, from 3 years ago, 4 years ago in the pandemic cycle, from 1% interest rate to 5% interest rates, or 5.5%. And the problem is, to do that, you have to issue yet more bonds to pay for that. So we're just getting awash with issuance. And this has been my argument about the everything code, is that there is no way governments can issue bonds at 5% interest when you're 100% of GDP in debt, because there's not enough economic growth to cover it. So the central bank has to buy it. And what's happening is, here we are pushing the central bank to buy it. Now, whether Janet's doing that on purpose is like, Jay, you're going to have to take this. But I think there's a game being played, is like, okay, we'll show the stress, we'll create the stress, we need to cut rates, we can roll this debt at lower levels. And if we can find the right excuse, like a recession, we can push it onto the Fed balance sheet. So if you go back to 2008, everybody got the get out of jail free card of 0 interest rates. So nobody had to pay interest on their debt. That was like a gift, right? 0 interest rates. Every government refunded at 0, but for some weird reason, they did it between 3 and 5 years. That 3 and 5 year debt cycle just keeps rolling over. It's exactly the Bitcoin halving cycle. It's exactly the economic cycle. It's exactly the US election cycle. They're all the same thing. It's this super cycle, this everything code. And we're into that point of the cycle now where the balance sheet should start rising to cover the debts from the previous cycle.
Raoul Powell believes we are still in crypto spring, but gradually heading into a very bullish combination of crypto and macro summer in 2024. According to the Real Vision founder, crypto is going to finish the year strong, but things might go sideways for a brief period in early 2024. But after the halving and an expected liquidity pump from the Federal Reserve and other central banks, he is certain that crypto asset prices will really take off. Powell predicts we will have at least 18 months of a massive bull market, during which prices will really go parabolic. Do you agree with his outlook and predictions for crypto assets like Solana and Bitcoin? Please drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.